Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Brooklyn College Graduate Open House. And this is a info session for the Feirstein Graduate School of Cinema. My name is Matthew Moore. I'm the Academic Program Manager for Feirstein. I've been involved with Feirstein since before it opened. I was part of a small team that helped open the school back in 2015, and I've been with it ever since. So I'm going to do a brief presentation about this school, and then I just want to open it up for questions. And as my colleague Jacoby mentioned, we ask that you please put those in the chat. It's just easier with so many people to just answer questions via the chat. We also have with us this evening Professor Jonathan Zalman. He's the program head for our media scoring program. We may be joined later by Professor Doug Gears, who runs our Sonic Arts program. At the end, I will add my contact information as well as contact information for Professors Zalman and Gears. All right, here we go. Just give me a second. I'm gonna share my screen here. All right. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that? Okay, great. All right. So just a quick overview. As I mentioned, we opened in 2015 with about 70 students studying in one of 6 programs or tracks. We refer to the cinema arts program as having tracks or specializations, and then media scoring, sonic arts, and screen studies are really separate programs. In cinema arts, the tracks or specializations consist of directing, producing, screenwriting, post-production, digital animation and visual effects, which we call DAVE, and cinematography. The image that you see is the stairwell that connects the 5th and 6th floor at 25 Washington Avenue, where Feirstein is located. This was designed by the architects who created our space as both a kind of a meeting space and obviously it connects our 2 floors. And you can see the student lounge, and on the 6th floor, in addition to the large student lounge, we have a screening room, and that's also where we have our sound stages, dressing rooms, green room, construction shop, props, a kitchen. All right. So our student body is about 50% each men and women. About 50% of our students are from underrepresented groups. The age range is very broad. So we always have a contingent of students who are right out of undergrad. Most students are at least a few years out of undergrad, and then we always get students who are a bit older who are pursuing career changes or, basically pursuing a lifelong dream of going to film school and becoming filmmakers. Roughly 20% of our students are international. That fluctuates a bit each year. And, every year, some of the students who we admit are coming in having previously completed advanced degrees, master's degrees, JDs, MBAs. Sometimes people already have MFAs and they're coming to Feirstein to get a second MFA. So we have a pretty massive space for New York City in New York City terms. It's hard to carve out 68,000 square feet for a school. So that includes sound stages. In this image, this is our large sound stage. It's about 4,000 square feet. And then we have 3 other smaller stages that are roughly 1,500 square feet. On the 5th floor, where most of our classrooms are located, we have all of our post-production suites, which are set up for picture or sound editing. Some of them are also set up for animation and visual effects. We also have color grading suites and a pre-mix and a mix room. We have what we call our sound and music area, which includes a recording studio and Foley and ADR studios. As I mentioned, on the 6th floor where our stages are located, we have dressing rooms, a green room, wardrobe, construction shop, etc. And then we also have a nice little intimate screening room. The screening room is used both for events. It's obviously used to screen films, and we also use it for classes. So the curriculum for the different programs at Feirstein each require a different amount of credits, and some are more prescribed than others. So for cinema arts, the curriculum as it currently stands is very prescribed. So in any given semester, you know really which 4 classes you're going to be taking. However, all of the cinema arts programs also have electives built in. So in a given semester, you know, one of those 4 classes might be a slot for an elective course. And electives can be classes that we're offering specifically that are kind of outside of the regular curriculum, or they can be courses from the other tracks or specializations that you might be interested in taking. So for cinema arts, it's a 66 credit degree. It's a 3-year program, except for producing, which is a 2-year 52 credit program. Media scoring and sonic arts are both 60 credits and can be taken part-time or full-time. And because they are part-time or full-time, we admit students both in the fall and the spring. And that same for screen studies, which is fewer credits, 36. That's an MA program. And again, you can matriculate in the fall or spring. I would say the majority of students in media scoring, sonic arts, and screen studies are part-time, or they do some part-time semesters and some full-time semesters. Most of our classes meet Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. There's morning classes that usually run from 9 or 9:30 till about 1. Afternoon classes that run from about 2 to 6. And then we, every semester, have classes at night, usually start at about 6:30. We offer a lot of classes at night, but it's not possible to do any of our programs exclusively in the evening. And this, by the way, is our screening room. So for admissions, the application for all of our programs, it's basically 2 parts. First are your application materials, and that's transcripts from every college or university you've attended, a statement of purpose, also known as a personal statement, 2 recommendation letters, and a resume or a CV, and a few words about those items. For the statement of purpose, we're looking for applicants to kind of tell us about their journey. You know, how did you come to the decision, you know, to apply to graduate film school, or to apply to graduate school, and you know, to sort of make a case for why we should consider you for our program. As far as recommendation letters go, for those of you who are right out of undergrad, maybe it makes sense to ask former professors, but it's not strictly necessary. And obviously for people who've been out of school longer, or for 10 or 15, 20 years, you're probably not going to be asking your college professors for your recommendation letters. And I always, just tell people, ask people who are well positioned to, to speak to your strengths, your potential and strengths as a possible student for our program. Resume or CV, there's no one right way to do it. A lot of people just submit their traditional work resumes, and that's fine. I would just say, as much as you can, include things in your resume that show kind of your well-rounded experience. I think that's a good thing. And if you have some experience related to the program you're applying to, sometimes including a section for, say, relevant experiences is good. And that can include just coursework that you've done in your area of interest. The second and very important part of your application is the portfolio. And each program has its own requirements. So on our website, under admissions, you'll find a detailed description of the portfolio requirements for each program. If you have questions about that, you can always email us, and we'll let you know if you're headed in the right direction. Some of the portfolio requirements for the cinema arts tracks overlap a bit, but otherwise they're all pretty discrete. And with the exception of screen studies, which is a writing sample, and you can upload that to the regular admission system, everybody else, media scoring, sonic arts, and cinema arts, have to upload their portfolio materials to SlideRoom, and please only put your portfolio in SlideRoom. Please don't upload your resume or your statement or any of those items, or we might not know that you've actually submitted them. So scholarships at Feirstein, there's no separate application or essay or form. Everyone who applies to Feirstein and is admitted will be considered automatically for a scholarship. Our awards can be given on the basis of merit or financial need, but I would urge everyone who's applying to graduate school to fill out a FAFSA, because any institution you're applying to, if they're able to give out need-based aid, they're going to need to see the information that you provide through FAFSA, flawed though FAFSA is. The pool of money that we pull from to award student scholarships every year changes every year. Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. And the approach has typically been to try to offer most of our incoming students at least some support. We have never done full scholarships, and generally have not been able to give half scholarships, but we do try to to spread the wealth, as it were, depending on how much funding we have in a given year. So this is, for those of you who haven't been, this is part of Steiner Studios, and on the far right of this image is that brick building with the funny antenna on top is 25 Washington Avenue, where Feirstein is located. And then the rest of the image are the first 6 stages that Steiner built back in, I think, 2004. They now have 30 stages. So the Steiner lot is huge. And being at Feirstein, you're really kind of in the thick of it. I mean, we're right next door to all the stages. 25 Washington, where the Feirstein School is located is home to most of the production offices for the shows that are at Steiner, a lot of art department offices, mill shops for set and props, prop building. Sometimes productions will set up kind of makeshift post-production facilities, and sometimes they will shoot in our building as well. I do want to talk a little bit about our relationship with Steiner, and specifically, you know, how we interact with Steiner Studios. Doug Steiner, who's president of Steiner Studios, is on our advisory board, so we obviously have a relationship with him. But that doesn't guarantee us any access to the shows, the films and the television shows that are shooting at Steiner. You know, we don't guarantee anyone who comes to Feirstein internships or PA jobs or an opportunity to shadow. We have had success with internships. We've had students, when they graduated, get hired directly out of school to work on shows that are shooting on Steiner, on Steiner's lot. We've also had professionals from Steiner come over to guest lecture. A number of our part-time faculty have worked on the lot. We've sent students over to some of the stages to visit sets and talk to some of the professionals working on the shows there. But you know, otherwise, none of the shows are obligated to hire or to take on our students. Every year we try to, you know, to reach out and see what we can set up, but there's no guarantee, and I just want to be upfront about that, just to be clear that it's not a, you know, a thing where we just escort you over to set on your first day and your career begins there. So these are a few of the shows that have shot, you know, recently or in the past. You know, Power is a show on Stars it's now shooting its second spin-off. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I think, is getting ready for season 4. City on a Hill is I think shooting right now, and Joker was there last year. Production is actually going on at Steiner Studios right now. It's not as full as it would otherwise be, and it's a little crazy. Each stage has a tent set up where every single person working on the show is tested, I think, on a daily basis. But you know, the show must go on, and you know, there are a lot of shows there, and they're all, you know, trying to move forward and continue working, which is a good thing. I want to just talk for a minute about getting to Steiner Studios, getting to the Feirstein Graduate School. A lot of buses serve the area where the Navy Yards are. And the nearest subway is probably the Clinton Washington G. You can take the F train to York Street or the AC to High Street and take a bus from there. But there's also a shuttle that the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation runs, and that shuttle goes to all of those subway stops: Clinton Washington G, York Street F, High Street AC. It also goes to Barclay Center. The shuttles run about every 15 minutes, and all Feirstein students, once they get an ID, have access to those shuttles. I don't know how appealing it is to consider taking a shuttle at this moment in time, but hopefully that'll be a good option in the not too distant future. Also, just down the street on Flushing Avenue is a terminal for the New York City ferry, and we're on the Astoria line, which serves Long Island City and Astoria, and also goes to Manhattan. And it's actually a really nice way to travel, and it costs the same as a subway or a bus ride. And I like to end with this image. This is from a few years ago. The gentleman sitting proudly in the center of the image is Jonathan Wax. He was our founding director, and he's since retired. And this is a mix of students, current and former students, and some of our faculty. Up at the top of the image, sort of in the middle, standing behind that railing, is Barry Feirstein, who's the namesake of our school. And I show this image just to kind of talk about Feirstein as a pretty close-knit community. Going to film school is a unique experience. You spend a tremendous amount of time in class and outside of class with everyone. Filmmaking is a collaborative medium, so we really emphasize people trying to come together to share their creative vision, and to try to make amazing work together. And we really have an amazing student body and faculty and staff. Everybody is very committed and works hard. When there isn't a pandemic going on, this facility is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you'll find people awake or not in every nook and cranny of our 68,000 square foot space. So thank you. I am going to take the screen share off and start looking at some, okay. So just want to open it up and ask everyone to start typing some questions. All right, so Andrew has written, you only have amateur film experience and have never written a script or treatment. Not sure who you'd ask for a recommendation, what you'd submit as portfolio. So for everyone's information, for cinema arts in particular, we don't require that you have a formal background in film, either from going to film school or having worked professionally. And for most of the specializations or tracks, we have portfolio options that will enable you to submit something creative without having made a film. Obviously, if you're applying to cinematography, you have to submit a sample of work that you shot, or for post-production, you have to submit something that you edited. But otherwise, you don't need a formal background in film. As far as the portfolio goes, just pay close attention to what is on our website in terms of our requirements for the specific track or program you're applying to, and then for recommendation letters, you could ask a supervisor or a manager. You could ask a work colleague or somebody that you've made creative work with, and again, just try to find people that know you and can speak about your potential as a student. Okay, let me scroll up a little bit. All right, thanks for all the questions.
Yeah, I'm trying. I was trying to catch up with the questions as well.
Yeah, okay, so the deadline to apply for fall 2021, we have what's called a priority deadline, and that's January 15th. And what that means is that you apply by the 15th of January, and those are the first applications that we'll read, the first applicants we'll interview, and the first admissions offers we'll make. And then we have a rolling deadline. So after the 15th, we will still take your application, and we'll continue to read applications and admit students until we've filled all of our places. So tuition, I'm actually just going to refer over to our website. So for the MFA in Cinema Arts, if you're a New York State resident, tuition is $10,567 a semester. If you're a non-resident, not a resident in New York State, or you're international students, it's a little over $15,000 a semester. If you're in sonic arts or media scoring, the tuition is variable depending on whether you're studying full-time or part-time. If you're studying part-time, you're charged a per credit rate, and there's also an academic excellence fee, and that academic excellence fee is prorated based on the number of credits that you're taking. For the MA program, if you're a New York State resident, it's about $5,500 a semester. If you're a non-resident, it's about $10,000 a semester. Delisa asks, can you elaborate on the portfolio for producing? So for producing, you have a couple options. One is a treatment for a feature or a pilot or series that you'd like to produce. Or you can write kind of a traditional essay about a film that you admire, but writing it from kind of the perspective of producing, maybe from the perspective of a creative producer, what you admire about the film. And so the spring deadline, so for producing, we only admit in the fall. That may change in the future. We're considering the possibility of admitting students from a few other cinema arts tracks in the spring. But because our curriculum is prescribed and each semester is a prerequisite for the next, we have to figure out how exactly that would work if we admit students, say for instance, for producing in the spring. So as of now, if you want to apply, it has to be for fall 2021. Hi, Anthony.
Matthew?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions actually. Can I continue?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Sarwar Habib. I'm graduating like spring 2021
Okay.
from Brooklyn College, from film department. Okay.
All right.
So I'm planning to do my master's from directing, and I saw like on a website like there is a 66 credits I need to done, right?
Correct.
But is there any choice? Because as long as I'm a Brooklyn College product, right? So the credit I did in my undergrad, is that like any way like transfer to master's and it treat like kind of transferable?
Unfortunately not. You can't transfer undergraduate credits towards a graduate degree. However, we will consider the fact that you've done a lot of coursework in film, and for your information, I worked in the undergraduate program at film program at Brooklyn College for 9 years, so I'm definitely familiar with the curriculum. So if you come in, having done the program there, we'll consider, the coursework that you've done in terms of possibly exempting you from classes. You still need to earn the credits, but exemption means, you don't have to take certain classes that might be a little like rudimentary for you if you've gone to film school and you've spent 4 years, studying film.
And the reason I'm asking, because I'm looking some sort of courses like where I can finish my master's within like a year and a half maximum. I cannot go beyond. So I was just wondering if is there any chance, because I'm from Brooklyn College and I checked most of the courses in master's program in directing. I did most of the courses in my undergrad.
So unfortunately, it's not possible to do like an accelerated directing program at Feirstein, it would take you 3 years, regardless of the courses that you took in undergrad.
Okay.
All right, so Anthony, okay. So for scholarships, everybody's eligible. It doesn't matter if you're in state, out of state, or international. There are, you know, every once in a while we'll get a scholarship, you know, like somebody will donate funds that stipulate that, you know, the first preference is for New York State residents. But usually, even in those cases, that's the first preference. So like, you know, we can still give those awards to people who are not New York State residents or even the, you know, US citizens. Let's see here. Highlights the equipment and facilities. So the, you know, the facilities at Feirstein are kind of unmatched, especially in New York City. I would say out in Los Angeles, USC's, you know, is comparable. But yeah, I mean, you know, camera and lighting, we kind of have a bit of everything. We have 3 Alexas, including the LF. We have a bunch of red weapons. We have Sony FS7s, and then on down to, you know, C100s and DSLRs. And I don't want to bore everybody. We have an amazing collection of lenses and lighting and grip and dolly and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're kind of like in our facility kind of, you know, is soup to nuts. So it's like, you know, you can kind of make your film from end to end in our facility. We have kind of everything you need, you know, for post-production, and you know, it's a pretty amazing facility. We tried to build it so that we could really support every aspect of filmmaking, and so that as we were bringing everyone together, you know, who are specializing in all these different areas, you know, they'd have a chance to work in their area of specialization with, you know, cutting edge, you know, leading edge, state-of-the-art equipment and facilities. So what sets us apart from other schools? Well, we haven't been around as long as those schools, as you know. We've only been around, I mean, we're almost halfway through our 6th year now. I think, you know, one cool thing about Feirstein is we're a work in progress. The students who come in now, you know, are going to be part of kind of molding what Feirstein becomes in the future. We've now graduated 3 cohorts of students, and they're going out and hopefully making their mark in the world. We don't have like the extensive, you know, alumni network, obviously, that schools like NYU or USC, UCLA, et cetera, have. But what we do have is, I think, a forward-looking attitude and a lot of flexibility in that we're not stuck in one way of doing things. We've spent a lot of time since we opened, you know, really kind of looking at the curriculum and trying to make sure that it's the right curriculum, you know, for the 21st century. We constantly solicit feedback from students about their courses and programs, and to find out kind of what we can do better. I mean, one way, you know, of the schools you list, we're like AFI in that we're a track-based program. So we're kind of built around the idea of people coming in and specializing. You know, schools like NYU and UCLA in particular, you know, admit people as generalists, and, you know, and they come in and kind of, you know, carve out a niche, you know, for themselves. USC has their general cinema program, and then they also have specialized programs for producing and writing and so forth. So film festivals or showcases, I mean, our students have gotten their work into a whole range of domestic and international film festivals over the past few years. We just hired a new executive director. His name is Richard Gladstein. He couldn't be with us tonight because he's traveling, but Richard spent 30 years working as a producer in Los Angeles. He produced Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and a number of Quentin Tarantino's other films, Finding Neverland, Cider House Rules, a bunch of stuff. And one of the reasons why we hired him was to kind of help us continue to establish ourselves as a new graduate film school, and to build connections, which he is already doing quickly. He's a producer. He's really sort of aggressive about trying to build lasting connections for us to the industry, and that includes connections with festivals. As many of you probably are aware, applying at, like, just off the street, as it were, to a film festival is really one way of going about it. A lot of festivals, especially like Sundance, people have spent years kind of building awareness of the project that they're making, so that when it's finished and it's time to submit, Sundance, then it's judges are sort of expecting it, and so there's a certain way to go about trying to get films into film festivals. And our students have had some success so far, and we hope to have a lot more success in the future. There's a lot of questions here. How many films does a Feirstein student work on in their time attending? So if you're a director, you're making at least 4 films. You're required to make 4 films, 2 in your first year, 1 more substantial film in your second year, and then thesis in your third year. And so then if you're a cinematographer or an editor or a producer, you are going to work on those films. If you're a composer, that means there's lots and lots of films to score potentially. And we in particular try to connect the media scoring students with the thesis students. Most of our thesis films are scored by students in the media scoring program. For Sonic Arts students, they very often get involved in sound design and other aspects of sound post-production. For the screenwriters, the second film that directors direct is directed from a script that they haven't written. So the screenwriters can submit their scripts to a script bank, and then directors can pull from that script bank, and usually then they'll collaborate with the writer to rewrite, and then at the thesis level, some directors want to write their own thesis films, and some directors want to work with a producer and a writer to develop an idea they might have, and then let the writer actually write their scripts. All right, so I'm going to move on because there's a lot of other questions. Can more than one piece be submitted for the portfolio? Yeah, it depends on, like, if you're a director and you want to submit a couple shorter pieces, that's fine. If you've made a feature, which sometimes happens, and you want to submit an excerpt from that, that's fine. You want to submit something that's documentary or experimental or non-narrative, that's okay as well. But I would say generally, try to stick to what we ask for your portfolio. And if you have a question or you want to do something specific, you can contact me and we can talk about it. So advice for building a portfolio in filmmaking with beginner experience. I mean, we like to say we're a creatively driven institution. We're interested in unique voices, unique ideas, unique stories. And so, I would think about it in those terms. For directing and producing, you can write a treatment, and it doesn't matter if you've never written a treatment before. And you can think of it almost like writing a kind of a 10-page short story of the idea you have for a feature or pilot. if you are interested in screenwriting and never written a script, you know, there's lots of really excellent books that are not long that you could read and, you know, pick up the kind of finer points of screenwriting enough to write a short script and a couple synopses. You know, for post-production, you know, our post-production program includes picture and sound editing. So maybe we've had students who come specifically from a sound background, maybe like sound design for theater, and they want to submit a portfolio that's only sound and not picture editing, and that's fine as well. For cinematography, if you've never shot a moving picture, you can submit stills. So if you have a portfolio of still images, you can submit up to 20 of those. If there's anyone interested in media scoring, if Jonathan's still with us, I don't know, Jonathan, you want to say anything about your portfolio requirements?
Yeah, sure. They're pretty similar to the other programs. Basically, if you're submitting to media scoring, and I think Sonic Arts is pretty similar as well, you'll want to include, I think it's 2 to 5 pieces that Slide Room allows for, but you know, you don't have to feel like you have to meet a minimum or maximum. We like to look at 3 pieces. And stuff that speaks to you as a storyteller and as an artist, you know, something that's in your voice. And it can be music only. It can be with visuals if you have experience doing that, but we don't expect everyone coming into the program to have scored to the picture already. And we do have some students who come into the program more with like a music supervision or a music editing bent. So they might submit something that they might have music edited to picture, but is maybe not necessarily their music. And if that's the case, then you just want to indicate that it's not your music and whose music it is, so that, you know, there's the academic integrity there, that you're being clear with, you know, what your role was on the project and what you're, you know, representing and presenting to the panel. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
For international students who can't fill out a FAFSA, is there still scholarship and aid available? Yeah, as an international student, you're not eligible for, you know, federally backed U.S. loans, but scholarships, yes. I mean, you know, everybody's eligible for scholarships, and so if you're an international student, you know, you're as eligible as American residents. So Kitty asked, could you speak about opportunities to take classes with other departments? Do you mean other like tracks or specializations, or outside of Feirstein, other graduate programs that are not part of Feirstein? Let me see if I can.
Oh, I was wondering about other graduate programs. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So we have had students take courses in other graduate programs, and as long as you clear with your program head, you know, taking that course, if you want to count it towards your degree, we're fine with that. You can even potentially take courses at other CUNY schools, because there are, you know, other programs, you know, say like Hunter's Interactive Media Arts program, that, you know, they're, you know, have some things in common with us. So yeah, the thing is just, you know, you have to sort of petition the department to get permission to take the course you want to take. So like, for example, a year ago, someone wanted to take a playwriting course in our English department, and you know, the playwriting only admits a handful of students, you know, to their MFA program each year. So sometimes there's a question of whether they have enough seats. But as long as, you know, they feel comfortable that you know, you can do the work and you'll be a good addition to their class, people are generally open to it. All right, applying for directing, collaboration and hands-on aspect. How are we adjusting to the pandemic? Yeah, that's a good question. So Feirstein is one of the very few departments all across the entire city, University of New York, that is actually running hybrid classes. So with some in-person meetings for students. We are shooting films. Our facility is open. It's not open 24 hours a day. It's open 5 days a week, roughly from about 9 to 5. But we are open, and we are letting students come and use the facility and book space at our facility and pick up equipment. So we, obviously we had no experience with managing this kind of thing, and we have a production and safety officer who basically oversees production at Feirstein, and we have staff who oversee different aspects of our facilities that kind of manage people coming and going to use the facilities. As far as actual hands-on production, we're just limiting the number of students that can be on a crew at the moment, and because we've been successful so far, fingers crossed, no cases so far, we are going to try to expand the number of students that can be on set, but we have strict guidelines, and we expect students obviously to follow them. So the answer is we're doing the best we can, and I think the fact that we're able to offer some live instruction along with a lot of remote instruction is a good thing. And I'll also just say we don't require anyone, whether they're taking a hybrid class or not, to come to our facility this semester. We're not, if somebody's not comfortable, or if they have pre-existing conditions, they can do their coursework remotely. What software do you recommend we should be fluent in? It depends on, I don't think you have to come in fluent in anything. I mean, obviously, if depending on which program, I mean, we start people for picture editing with DaVinci Resolve, which is a free, DaVinci's known for color grading, but they also have a getting better every year picture editing component, and that's what we start students with, in part because it's free, and so you can install it and do it from home. We also teach Adobe Premiere Pro, and if you're a post-production student, you also have to learn Avid Media Composer. On the sound end, Pro Tools, obviously. I mean, even for students in the digital animation and visual effects program, I mean, some of them come in having used like Adobe After Effects. Very few come in having used more advanced software, maybe a bit of Maya, but we don't strictly require it. We sort of start you from the beginning, so you don't have to be fluent per se in any particular software. What are some scholarship opportunities for graduate students? I mean, we add some every year. Sometimes we spend donations that we've gotten, and so they change. I mean, the graduate of Brooklyn College, Joel Zwick, who probably most known for My Big Fat Greek Wedding, or if you're old like me, Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days and shows like that. He is donated specifically for directors. The Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment have been unbelievably generous and have given us a lot of scholarship money over the years. Time Warner, the Teamsters, Martin Scorsese recently made a donation. Most of our scholarships are for all Feirstein students, and they're not specific to given tracks, but there are a few that are track specific. There is an application fee that's $75, correct, Jacoby? Okay. So the screenwriting program is not capped at 14 students. So when we first opened, we considered like a kind of, not an arbitrary number of 14, but the idea with 14 students for any of our tracks was that the semester is 15 weeks long. And so when people are making thesis films, the idea of producing 14 thesis films in a 15-week semester seemed like a good number. But as as the years have gone on, we've kind of raised those caps depending on how many applications we get for a program, how many really strong applicants we get that we want to admit to our program. For screenwriting, if we had 14 students or say 16 students, we would offer 2 sections of every required class so that you're in, because you can't really run a 14 or 15 or 16 student screenwriting workshop. So if we admit more than 14 students or even 14 students, we'll divide those into smaller classes. So incoming class size, for the last like 4 years, typically we enroll about 85 students each year. So that's across all 9 of the programs or tracks that we run at Feirstein. So for FAFSA, it's been a long time since I filled out the FAFSA. You just go to FAFSA.org. You need, if you file taxes independently, or if if your parents file with you as a dependent, you definitely need that information. I mean, if you're filing as a dependent, they'll ask for a fair amount of information from your parents. If you're filing independently, it's a lot of it is the kind of information that you provide for your taxes every year. But just go to the website and take a look. I don't want to say it's a little painful, FAFSA. I don't think anyone enjoys filling it out, but our internships part of the curriculum. So internships are not strictly required, but they're definitely encouraged. And every year, things come up that are new internships that we're able to offer students. And then some are existing relationships that we have where we kind of place interns every year. We just set up something with Tribeca, so they have a ton of opportunities. And then there are a number of other companies. And then also, you can potentially intern on, if we can swing it or if you can manage it. If you work on a show, you could get internship credit for that. We had internships for several students on one of the shows that shoots at Steiner, and for one student that led to full-time employment. So she graduated and she's working on that show full-time now. If you submit something that exceeds 20 minutes, we reserve the right not to continue watching it after 20 minutes of it. So if it's 22 minutes, yeah, we'll probably watch the whole thing. If it's, if you've made a feature or like a long, kind of one of those in between 45-minute, whatever, you could take an excerpt from that. I wouldn't advise submitting like a feature film for your portfolio. Okay, so I talked about the editing software that we use. Okay, so for Diana, for editors, you have to submit, it can be a short project that you personally edited. It doesn't have to be a narrative project. It can be a doc, it could be a PSA, it could be a music video, it could be a spec commercial, any of that. Or it could be a reel. I'm just my personal opinion as far as reels versus actually submitting like a project. A reel, sometimes with a reel, it's hard to have context, and especially for editors, part of what you're doing is editing a reel, and sometimes it's hard to get an idea of your kind of like creative voice as an editor if you submit only a reel. You could submit a reel and a like an excerpt from a longer piece, that's one way of doing it. But I wouldn't just submit a reel, because reels, and that same goes for cinematographers. I personally would rather see like 5 minutes of a short project that you shot than you know, than a reel. Okay, yes. So scholarships, yes. A few of them are specific to programs, but most of them are general. Okay, Gabrielle asks, is it possible to have a focus on both screenwriting and directing? You can apply with a first and a second choice. You can't do like a double specialization, but if you're in either of those programs, you can take courses potentially from either track as electives. If you're taking a course outside of your track, and it does happen pretty commonly, we basically want to make sure we have a seat for you in the class, and if there's a prerequisite, that hopefully you've taken that prerequisite, and if you haven't taken the prerequisite, we just want to make sure that you can handle the work in the class. But otherwise, for most classes, we're pretty open to having students from outside of the track take that class. There are exceptions in each of the tracks. There's some directing classes, some writing classes, some classes, cinematography, et cetera, that are really only for students in that track or specialization, but we tend to be pretty flexible. And so, like, you know, and we also do want students to cross-pollinate. You know, so if you come in as a screenwriter, you know, there are some classes in directing that you can take. If you come in as a director, you will take screenwriting classes as part of your requirements. But if you want to say take like a TV writing class or a feature writing class, you can potentially do that. So for Dave, usually, like, we could take 12, we could take as many as 14, and that's probably pushing it. Usually the cohorts are 8 or less for the Dave program. And Dave, that's digital animation and visual effects, has more electives built into it than some of the other programs. And the reason for that is that each cohort maybe has different interests. So some cohorts come in and they're really interested in animation and different, you know, specialized aspects of animation. And so the person who runs that program will solicit suggestions from students to kind of customize the curriculum a little bit to meet the needs of given students. And for that reason, students like in the first, second, and third year in Dave tend to take electives together, more so than some of the other programs. Again, the scholarships, you know, they're generally, most of them are for students in regardless of what program you're in. So yeah, so for post-production, yeah, you have to do almost equal parts picture and sound. And also, you know, you'll have to do a semester of motion graphics and visual effects. And some of the post students who are kind of interested in visual effects or animation, you know, maybe becoming like an editor for animated work, sometimes we'll take courses in the Dave track. The advantage to applying, you know, by the January 15th priority deadline is just that, you know, your application is going to be among the first we read. You'll get an interview earlier and hopefully an offer of admission earlier. Let's see, that seems to be all of the questions so far. Anybody have other questions? I think if you know, you can just unmute yourself and if you just want to.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm interested in the Cinema Arts MFA program in post-production. So you mentioned, so I asked the question, is the editing track specific only for editing? And you said there's like sound and some sort of animation programs. What kind of like animation programs do you also offer?
Well, so what I mean is that you take a sequence of picture editing classes, you take a sequence of sound post-production classes, that deal with all the various aspects of sound post-production. And then there's specifically a class where you have to learn, motion graphics and work on like basic compositing using Adobe After Effects. I don't think they really get into Nuke in that class. Nuke is a node-based compositing program that visual effects artists use. So it's really that. It's those. So it's what I like to say. It's kind of equal parts picture and sound. So you're not just. I mean, a lot of people come in and want to be picture editors. Some people want to come in and really want to work in sound post-production. And then, some people, what I was saying is some people branch out and they find they're interested in animation. They want to, learn more about that. And so sometimes the post-production students have taken courses in our Dave program to kind of like expand their horizons.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's see if there are other questions. Jonathan, if you're still with us, is there anything else you'd like to say about media scoring?
Yeah, I'm happy to add to that. If anyone else is applying to media scoring, happy to answer any specific questions about that. And also, Diana, to your point about sound, were you interested in sound as a post-production applicant?
I'm interested in picture and sound
Okay.
and animation graphics.
Yeah, so when it comes to sound, there is some crossover between, I would say, post-production, media scoring, and sonic arts, those three tracks. There are some focuses and specializations to each track for obvious reasons. Media scoring focuses more on music, but audio is a huge component of music, just like audio is a huge component of picture. So we do often have students in post-production taking media scoring classes, media scoring students taking post-production classes, and sonic arts students. It's the trifecta of the three programs, really. So there is a lot of crossover. I don't see as much crossover with Dave, but maybe that's only because that's so visual heavy that we don't see as many Dave students in the media scoring courses, or the other way around, although I think one media scoring student did take a Dave class if I recall correctly, but I could be mistaken about that.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
In terms of media scoring, yeah, we do a lot of we do music composition, music editing, music supervision. So anything music for picture related, we have a 2-semester sequence in sound design and sound editing, taught by a great professor named Julia Shirar, and she's worked on a ton of films. The one that always jumps to mind is Squid and the Whale, which is just a film that I really love, and she worked on the sound for that. But she's done a ton of other independent and not so independent films as well. And so we have some really great faculty on that side of things.
Including Jonathan.
Well,
He was very active working composer.
Yes. Thanks, Matt.
Just putting in some contact information, just emails for myself and for Jonathan, and also for Professor Gears, who could be with us this evening. Okay, so Holly, most of your background is in theater. How much of that experience would be considered relevant? We have lots of people who come from theater in our various programs, obviously, especially among directors, or sometimes people with theater backgrounds will come in and want to do screenwriting. But I mean, depending on what you're intending to study, it's definitely relevant. And I also, having done a little bit of theater myself, I think, I think theater and film in terms of academic pursuits or the academic experience are kind of similar in that, just the amount of time that you spend together with people and how close you can kind of get with people and how, how much time you get to like kind of share your creative vision and collaborate, and I think, so I think, theater background really prepares people well for, the degree of collaboration that we hope to happen in film school. And yeah, Diana, live event management, that's good. If you ever considered producing, that's a good prep for producing, but yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Anyone else have questions? Sorry, I'm just typing in last contact here. Is everybody joining us from the New York area this evening, or any of you outside of New York or outside of the US, or?
I'm Bronx, New York.
Okay.
I'm from the Bronx.
Okay, the boogie down. I'm in Brooklyn, and they were shooting a feature film on my block today, so I got stopped on the street, so I wouldn't walk into a shot. And I don't envy anybody who has to do that job, the so-called lockdown. You have to stop New Yorkers on the street when there's a shoot going on. They're usually not so happy about it. I tried to be pleasant. All right, yeah, exactly. That's a PA job. Northeast Tennessee, all right, cool. Ohio, all right. When we first opened, the majority of our applicants were living in New York, and I say specifically living in New York because most people you meet in New York weren't born here. I wasn't born in New York. My daughters are the only real New Yorkers in my home, but as we've gone on, we really get applicants from all over the US and really now all over the world. So it's amazing. I don't understand how people actually hear about us in some places, but I think, the more people that are coming from different parts of the world and different experiences and backgrounds, it just enriches the experience of going to a film school. And it also makes for interesting work. I would say one thing about the films that Feirstein students make, they're not run-of-the-mill, and there's a lot of like sort of interesting kind of viewpoints and interesting voices being, I think, expressed. Okay, so it looks like there are no more questions. I included my contact info in the chat, as well as Professor Gears, who heads our Sonic Arts program, Professor Zalbin. If you want to reach out to me via email, I can put you in touch with program heads for our MFA Cinema Arts program. So like all the Cinema Arts programs have a head of program. All of the programs have a head of program, and I'm happy to put you in touch with them. You can also reach out to me if you want to connect with some students and just like maybe ask questions via email. In normal times, I invite everyone to come sit in on classes. I'm not quite as comfortable doing that for remote and Zoom-based classes, but hopefully sometime soon we'll be open again and people can actually come to our school and sit in on class and just get a sense of school. And we'll be doing once we're open again, we do tours on a regular basis. So, thank you everybody very much for joining us tonight. Jacoby, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
Yes, so if everyone can please complete the poll right now, I'm going to launch it and just give us feedback on your thoughts on the open house and stuff like that. And then once you're done, feel free to, if you would like to leave or if you want to ask any other questions, my email is, I'm going to provide my email in the chat right now. So if you have any other admission questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you both. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you. Bye, Jonathan.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Denise.